Hi, everyone. My name is Misty Gardner, and this is my case study when ethics and policies collide. We'll start off just kind of an overview of what was happening in this case study. We have Richard Inman is the assistant principal at Rockert Junior High. This is his first year as principal. He has built relationships with the kids that are from the same part of town as he was from when he was a kid. So it's been really beneficial for him to have that background to build a relationship with those kids. The main kid is James. He's the leader of the group and his friends, and Mr. Inman has been able to develop relationships with them by playing basketball after school with them and spending some extra time with them. James is a kid who struggles and has been struggling, but with developing the relationship with Mr. Inman, they have seen some improvement in his grades, and with him not getting into so many fights as he had been before. David is another person in this case study. He's a younger kid than James, and he's an honor student who has never been in trouble and always has done what's expected of him. He's also a trombone player in the band and does really well at that. A teacher sees James and David in the hallway and suspects that James has given David drugs. So she turns them in to the assistant principal, and it's his job to check it out. So he has James come in, and then he also has David come in, who is escorted by the school resource officer, brings him down to the office. Once they're in the office, they have the conversation about what happened, and David is very emotional about what happens. They end up searching him, and they find a set of brass knuckles on him. When the police officer arrests David right there in front of him, James takes on the responsibility and steps up and says that it was his fault, that those were his, and that he made David take them to hold on to them for him so he could use them after school. From the decisions made, David was arrested and expelled, which is devastating to him and his family. James is also arrested and going to be expelled, which is no surprise to his mom. So he's been in trouble before. She doesn't expect any more out of him, but David's family is very devastated along with David. Mr. Inman is in a very hard place in not wanting this to affect David for the rest of his life. David's never had any problems before, and pinning this on David could be very devastating emotionally, mentally, physically, everything on him. And Mr. Inman is disappointed in James, but he's also extremely proud of him for taking the responsibility of the decision he made to bring them and the decision he made to bother David with this whole situation. He has taken the blame for this situation, even though their school has a zero tolerance policy with weapons, and knuckles is something that is an immediate arrest by the police officer. Again, the board has their school has a zero tolerance policy in place for the possession of a weapon on school grounds. And as I said, James has admitted that he made David take the knuckles, but it does not seem to matter to the police or to the board, and Mr. Inman does not think it is fair to punish David the same way as James. Looking at the people in the case study, Mr. Inman, as I said, is a first-year principal. This is all new to him. He's the assistant principal. James is the 15-year-old boy from the south side of town who gets in a lot of trouble. David is the honor student who has never been in trouble before. And we have the police officer who brought David to the office and then was in on the conversation that Mr. Inman had with both boys. The unknown. I feel like there's a lot of unknown in this. Did David ask for the knuckles? Was somebody bothering David? And so he went to James and asked, hey, what can you do to help me? Maybe somebody else was bullying him. We don't know. Has James ever brought any other weapons to school? Where did James get these knuckles in the first place? Who did he get them from? Why does he think he needs them? What's going on in his life that he feels like he needs those to take care of something? Did Mr. Inman have to have the police officer in the room with him when he questioned the students? Where was the principal in this whole situation? I feel like a situation like this should not be the responsibility of just an assistant principal, that the principal needs to come in and help weigh in on the situation also, and maybe even your superintendent. I know they're a really big school with 900 kids, which is a lot of kids, and so I'm sure they have at least one assistant principal, if not another one. And obviously Mr. Inman's job is to work on discipline, but we don't know that for sure either. That's kind of an unknown also. In the place, this is at a junior high. The kids are 15 and 13 years old. There seems to be groups in the school. I feel like the school saying in our case study that they're from the south side, that you've got the kids are grouped into groups. I wonder, is this the only junior high in the town? So that, you know, we've got kids from all types of social economics, or is it just the lower side of town and then there's a different junior high? I feel like that's kind of some of the unknowns in this situation. The program, their school is obviously big enough that they have a police officer, which my question, is there a lot of problems with this in the school all the time, or is this an unusual situation in the school? But he is there. If the law is broken, he does make arrests right there on the school grounds and takes him to the station. And Mr. Inman is to take care of the situation and fill out the paperwork so that policies are followed. If he does not fill out the paperwork for David, he gets the call from the director of secondary education to fill out the paperwork. My question, what is a director of secondary education? I guess that is something for me that I don't quite understand, or understand what his role is in all of this. So I have that question of, who is this person and what role does he play in it? And again, there's never any mention about the superintendent, the board, the head principal, anything like that, which I think is all important to include in this situation. With the zero tolerance policy, it makes it very hard for both boys to not be punished in this situation. You know, reading the case study, we can see the two sides. We can see that David, the knuckles were not his. He was forced to take them, to hold on to them for him. He had no intention of using them from the information that we have. He was scared to death to take them. James, on the other hand, you know, he's known to get in trouble. He's known to make decisions that aren't very good. And if there's a zero tolerance policy, there isn't wriggle room when there's weapons involved. And it would be very hard to punish James and not David for the fact that David was caught with it in his possession. If you go outside what your policies and procedures are, looking at it from a student point of view or the other staff point of view, not knowing anything else and just seeing this situation, you can't give a punishment to one and one not to the other. If you do, it opens doors for more things to happen that you're going to have to bend those rules for. Once you steer away from rules, it makes it easier to do it again and again, and then you end up with policies and procedures that mean nothing, and you're going to have many fires to put out instead of just a few. Policies and procedures are there to be followed to help make our schools safe, to help make our students safe, to help them feel comfortable. And it's hard to deviate from policies and procedures. I feel that the principal should have been brought in. Again, I've said that over and over, that, you know, where's the principal and superintendent to help in this situation? This is a big issue that may need some backup or input from the principal and school board. If Mr. Inman had thoughts about David not deserving to be punished, he should have been in contact with them right away and telling them his concerns. I do feel like there needs to be some more research in this that could be conducted to find out what could be done to make this situation better for David. Is there a way, even after following the policies and procedures, that something could be done to help David not have such a severe punishment because of the circumstances of James stepping up and saying, hey, this is all on me? Policies are made to be followed. When they're not followed, there are consequences for our choices. Again, you know, you go back to those policies and procedures and how important it is for us as building leaders in a school system to make sure that we're following those policies and procedures. We've got to follow them to keep our schools running the way they are. They're there for the protection of students and staff in our school in general. Another choice you could go with in this situation is for him not to fill out the paperwork and take the consequences from getting reprimanded, which could possibly mean he loses his job. Sometimes, if an educator feels that's the best situation to help protect the child, they may take that route and do that. Unfortunately, in this situation, there's going to be someone who gets hurt and loses something. As educators, we never want that to be our students, but sometimes there are things we cannot control no matter how much we fight for things to change. If Mr. Inman does not expel David, he will face consequences also for not following the district policies and could possibly lose his job. I feel like if David is sent to the DAEP for his 45-day suspension, he will have that on his record for the rest of his educational career. He will also have a felony offense on his record that will follow him. This could affect him both physically, emotionally, mentally. There is no telling what the long-term effects that could have on him and what problems it could cause for him in the future. James made the right decision in telling the truth about the knuckles, and it was a big breakthrough for him. If David still ends up in the same trouble as James, what does it show him about telling the truth? James finally made that breakthrough of accepting responsibility for his actions. But if he sees that David still is in the exact same trouble that he is in, what benefit was it of James to tell the truth? He tried to step up, tell the truth to help David out. But even in telling the truth, it could look like to him that it did no good. And it could be discouraging for him later on to not tell the truth, because what difference does it make? He told the truth, but it didn't change anything for David. So is he ever going to tell the truth again? And does it really matter? We want James to see that it does matter, and that even though he's in trouble, it was a good breakthrough for him to be honest and try to help David out in this situation. My final decision would be to follow the board policies and fill out the paperwork as I was to do in order to follow the zero tolerance. But my next step, as soon as I did that, would be finding a way to help David get his consequences reduced or dropped. I would start researching. I would start meeting with this board, with the principal, with the superintendent, with his mom, and we would fight it. I understand board policies and procedures. They have to be there. They have to be in place for our students and our staff and our schools. But sometimes there's underlying circumstances that have to be considered too. So you follow the procedures and policies, but then you start figuring out how you can fight it. Maybe you can have an appeal process, something like that, or a meet with the school board and they listen to everything and they can overturn it. Having zero tolerance policies does not leave much wiggle room when something happens. And you've got to have those strong policies to keep students in check. If you're always given a little bit of wiggle room, everyone's going to take a little bit more, and you're going to create bigger problems. To me, fair does not always mean equal. Every situation a person deals with has many factors that have to be looked at and considered before making a decision. Wording and policies and procedures have to be considered when they are writing them. I also feel Mr. Inman should write a letter and put it in David's permanent file, letting others know what happened in this situation. So even though if it sticks with him forever, if he can help with a letter of reference or be a reference for him and let people know that what really happened and that, it was a zero tolerance policy and it was just an unfortunate thing that happened to him. My plan, as I mentioned earlier, is the first thing I think the principal and superintendent need called in. The board needs to know what's going on. The laws have to be followed. You can't get around laws. That's something that has to be followed. We as teachers want to set that good example for our students and staff, and we have to follow those laws. So if you bend the laws in front of students when they know what the law is supposed to be or the policy and procedure, what does that show them? We're not setting that good example. So even when sometimes it's not the decision that we want for those kids, we have to show them that laws and those things, it's not make-believe, it's real. After meeting with the superintendent and the board happens, then we need to figure out how to help David. There's got to be some ways that or some ways to research and help him in this situation that he unfortunately was caught in. We as educators want our students to be treated fairly and be given a chance. Students sometimes make decisions that make this hard to happen. Policy and procedures do not always fit every situation, but when they are there, we have an obligation to follow them. There are times when other factors play a part in the decisions being made, which makes following procedures and policies hard to follow. When we disagree with a policy or procedure, we need to follow the chain of command and make our concerns known. If we feel a student is being treated unfairly, we need to speak up, but do it in a manner that sets a good example for our students and shows them the way to handle hard situations in the correct manner. We are always an example for our students, and they are always learning from us, and we can make every moment a teachable moment for our students. And being an example for our students, we can help them to become successful in everything they do. Thank you.